And welcome back to another Hearts of Iron Dev Diary. So as promised, we are continuing on our series of trying to catch back up on the Dev Diaries, and now we're going to be talking about the new one, which I'm most excited for because I play as a USA player, but unfortunately for a lot of people that play as the United Kingdom, France, Germany, probably the Soviets, really just several different countries in general, more even in Asia like Japan, the Raj, really the UK. I know I said them already, but that's how serious it is for them. And France, this is going to be a huge thing you're going to need to keep an eye on now, even if you're not at war. So basically, this is the new update part that's going to be talking about resistance and compliance. But realistically, they're just changing the way the resistance and garrison system and all that kind of stuff works. So let's go ahead and get started about this. So hello HOI boys and ladies, welcome to the second dev diary of our upcoming unannounced expansion in 1.8 Husky update. The update features some big changes to how occupied territory functions. The biggest part of this overhaul in the game and current resistance system into what we are calling the resistance and compliance system. This should help curb a bit of power from snowballing. Hello, Germany. So again, they're even putting this in there specifically for people like Germany to remove gamey early war sniping of provinces and a bit of a clock on a world conquest run. So basically, I've already read this, so I'm just going to try to keep this very short and very simple and an easy way to remember it. So the old resistance system is rather simple, and it is. Basically, the way the old resistance system worked is if you were at war with somebody and you had to be at war, you take a territory from somebody. If that country is still at war with you, even if you took that territory, you have to garrison it based on your occupation law. If you're very harsh, you're going to have a lot of sabotage where it's going to cause damage to infrastructure, factories, and so on. But you can stop all those penalties by having more garrison troops there and larger suppression divisions for military police. Now, if you don't have that option and you're stuck having to just leave it alone, you could put it on the lowest, like no penalties whatsoever kind of thing, but you wouldn't really get anything from the state. And the harsher you would be, the more resources you would get out. And that is what they're changing. The growth of resistance is no longer stopped by having an adequate garrison. Resistance now functions with a target system. Now, this is where it gets interesting, right? The resistance level will grow or decay towards whatever the current target is. The target is impacted by the development of the state, the core owner still existing, and other factors. Resistance activities will still scale with a level of resistance, but their garrison will work as a shield that absorbs these sabotages. If the garrison is adequate, the garrison shield will absorb the vast majority of sabotage attempts and take losses to manpower and equipment. Not having an adequate garrison means a higher resistance target and more resistance activity, making it past the garrison shield to the state. So basically, here's what it's saying. Garrisons are now going to be able to be attacked. You're going to possibly lose some of the support equipment. You're going to lose weapons from garrisons, and you're probably going to also more than likely lose manpower. Now, all that they're going to do now is stop damage to buildings, right? You're not going to have damage to different things like that, but you're really the problem, as you can see here, you can still have your resistance go up, which eventually, if it's not taken care of and it's really not low enough, you can have uprisings and all this other stuff, which they talk about in a minute. But the reason I said this is such a big deal for France, the Soviets, and all these other countries is they mention later on that you have to have a core on the territory. If you have a core, you're not going to have that penalty. But if you look over here, right, as we can see, the state owner of this territory is France. They're claimed, this is Chad, but I believe that's Romania, or it might be Chad, I don't know. But do you see how it shows the controller is at peace? That means that even though you may not be at war with somebody, if you have a territory that has a foreign claim, even if you're not at war, even if that country has been completely annexed, for a while at least, you're probably still going to have to garrison the area or you're going to have resistance, which this means that places like, say, Germany, for example, even if they take Czechoslovakia through a focus, they're still going to have to probably garrison the territory. Now, if they take early runs and, say, annex France very early on, well, you're still, even if you're at peace, going to have to garrison those territories. So you're going to have to do really two things. You're going to have to garrison the ports from naval invasions, but you're also going to have to garrison it from resistance, even if you've already taken that nation over. So that is probably one of the biggest deals that I've seen so far in this little update. I mean, it's really interesting, but they cover a little bit more about it later on. Compliance is in some ways opposite of resistance. It is the rating of how willing the local state is to work with their occupiers. Compliance will normally start at 0 and increase slowly over time. Compliance growth will generally be slow, and several factors can affect that speed of growth. As compliance increases in a state, it will decrease local resistance and give access to more resources, factories, and manpower. Now, as we can see here, the compliance system, it's almost at 100%, so maybe once it's at 100%, there will not be any more resistance growth compared to up here where the compliance system is at 4%, and there's 50% resistance. Or maybe, yeah, no, that would be at 4%. So, it's kind of interesting, but I think the way that this is supposed to work so far, with what I've seen, the resistance target is them trying to target something like infrastructure or a military factory or something, and the garrison troops there are going to be attacked first instead of once this resistance target hits 100% or 50% or it says base value 30%, I don't know. Once it hits the required level, it's probably more than likely going to fire off events like, hey, if you don't have enough garrisons here, well, your military factory has got damaged. So that's going to be a little bit interesting. Anyway, resistance and compliance will also have various effects on that various effects that are unlocked. Resistance will gain the ability to more frequently bypass the garrison shield after it reaches a strength of 25%. Reaching 25% compliance means reducing suppression requirements for the current level of resistance. So even if you have areas garrisoned with enough troops, you might still have them get through, essentially. Kind of the idea. So the highest level of resistance unlocks include 2 levels of uprising. The first is a passive malice that is applied to the state, adding attrition, decreasing movement speed, and slowing org regain for occupying forces in the area. Again, that's why I said this is going to probably largely affect Germany and the UK, because those are probably going to be the 2 most important players, and probably even the Soviets, because they don't have cores on, I believe, Ukraine and several other territories. So they are more than likely going to have to deal with that. The second level of uprising is a full-scale organized uprising that functions somewhat like a civil war. The states that rise up will gain low-quality divisions and either rejoin their former masters, or if they no longer exist, reestablish themselves on the map. Both of these should be somewhat rare and will require the local resistance to be supported by an outside source. Now, that I'm really excited to see, because this whole thing about you need an outside source, at least in multiplayer games, and maybe even single player, that could mean that the United States and other countries will actually probably have to help get, small events before D-Day firing off. Like, the United States will want to send weapons and stuff to help support Poland to uprise. The United Kingdom and the US might want to support France or Vichy or something like that to have uprises, things like that. That's actually really fun in the idea of timing naval invasions with uprisings, In conjunction with these new systems, we have reworked how occupied states are handled. Colony states will be removed as a concept, and every state not controlled by a nation with a core territory on the state will be viewed as occupied. Now, see, this is what I'm talking about. It says colony states will be removed as a concept, and every state not controlled by a nation with a core territory we viewed as occupied. So, I don't know. I think what they're saying is, all right, if it's a colony, you're going to have to keep troops there. And that's what I'm getting out of this. You're not going to have to keep too many there, but even though it says it's removed as a concept, it also says every state not controlled by a nation with a core on the state will be viewed as occupied. So I think what it means is if you have a puppet and they're a colony, like say for example, British Raj or Australia, they're more colonies when you really get down to thinking about it. You're not going to have to garrison those areas. However, for say for example, the UK, you might have to in Madagascar. If the UK owns Madagascar, if there's not a core on that territory, you're gonna have to keep troops there. In Africa, for example, there are foreign claims on several states in Africa, so more than likely the UK will have to keep troops as garrisons throughout Africa compared to places like Australia or the British Raj. That's what I'm getting out of it, and that could be totally wrong. Let me know down below. But anyway, let's go ahead and finish this. But more specifically, I think this is going to affect the Axis like Germany, Japan, maybe Italy. However, let's see. Colony states will be removed as a concept in every state. Alright. Occupied states will now be less rewarding to the occupier. Access to the factories and resources of the state will be default by much lower than before. However, the conqueror can get more out of the state by cultivating compliance or adjusting occupation laws. This gives a bit of granularity? I don't know. Between what was previously colony states and cores. So this is more just saying, compared to previously where you just like swap the laws around, you get more stuff out. You can swap the laws, which they cover down here, and I think they're just saying that over time it'll actually, go up some. So occupation laws will also be updated to work with the new resistance and compliance system and give the player more choice. Previous occupation laws were a mostly linear system of paying political power and increasing suppression, need for increasing rewards. If you could afford it, harsher occupation laws would almost always be more beneficial. This was also a system not a lot of people interacted with, as it was hidden behind several layers in the menu. Now, personally, I know that is true because I've done a few videos on the occupation law system and not a lot of people knew about it before, to the point where I even did a 10 tips video for people that were new to Hearts of Iron to teach them how to use that system, because not a lot of people knew it even existed, and it's very helpful. At least until this update comes out, press Q inside of the game on your keyboard, and you'll see manage occupied territories. Once you've taken enemy territory and you're still at war, that's how you can adjust it for people watching this. But for the last little part here, new occupation laws are built around trying to give the player a choice based on a playstyle and short and long-term goals. The new laws tend towards one of three objectives: compliance growth, resistance suppression, factory resource exploitation. Compliance growth is a long-term reward. Resistance suppression and resource gains are a short-term reward. These laws will in turn be bad at what they are not concerned with. For example, focusing on resistance suppression will generally not be very rewarding in terms of resources or long-term compliance growth. Cultivating compliance will mean that the player will not have to deal with a period of low yields, and maybe a more active resistance movement. Each of the big three ideologies will also get their own special occupation laws. These laws fit with the themes of the ideologies to give them some unique choices. So that is really cool, and I think here is really going to be the main idea behind them. No garrison would probably mean, hey, you guys do whatever you want. You have complete freedom. We're not going to fight you or anything. Local autonomy is probably going to be some resistance, but you're going to be gaining a ton of the compliance. Civilian oversight is, maybe more recruitable population. I don't know, but I think right about this area between secret police and local police force is the point where it's going to start getting less towards the whole compliance and start increasing resistance. And the further down you go, it's going to be giving more output, but a very high chance of resistance and a possibility of uprisings. So, and in here they even show how severe it can be. It looks like right here there's an 80% uprising. The division speed is negative 50%. Strategic redeployment disabled, yes. Local supplies are negative 50% and division attrition is plus 30%. So that would be absolutely huge, especially in multiplayer games, if the allies can get a resistance thing going in, say, Poland or, Czechoslovakia, Poland, Ukraine, Belarus, places along those lines. If they can get something like that going in multiplayer, this would be hugely bad for German players. But anyway, guys, go down below. Tell me what you guys think of the dev diary, what you think some of this stuff means, and if you think I may be incorrect about something, I would actually seriously appreciate you guys saying that so we can try to get the most out of these dev diaries as possible. There's currently no release date for this update. However, I'm more than likely imagining it will probably, with where they are right now, probably be early next year. I mean, I'm just guessing here. I have not seen a date yet on any of these, but I would say probably early next year to July. You know, at the latest, somewhere in that ballpark. But I would say more than likely early next year, like January, maybe February, is my guess. But again, I could be wrong. I was wrong about Man the Guns by a few months, but never know. I'm sure we'll definitely have it before mid-2020, though. I'm very sure about that. But anyway, hopefully you guys have enjoyed this. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you guys in the next Dev Diary or video. Stay awesome.